June and Al Frank surveyed the dinner table. The silver, china, lighted tapers, and platters were decked out to a turn. They nodded to their guests, colleagues from Al's law firm, and all sat down to what promised to be a perfect evening of home entertaining. Al and June could count on a quiet evening. Their teenage son Robert was out on a date. Despite their outward ease with their guests, though, these parents harbored anxiety about their increasingly wayward son. That anxiety wound into a knot when the phone rang during dessert. June answered the phone and called for Al with a trembling voice. Robert and Desiree were being held at the sheriff's office. They had both been drinking, so Robert, in a gesture of chivalrous cowardice, let Desiree drive. She drove the car over a curb, conveniently across the street from the police station, and shredded a tire. Both got tickets. The officer wanted to know when Al and June could come by to bail them out. June's worst fears were realized. Her 18-year-old had formally embarked on a life of crime. Her face pale, she groped her way back to the table. When her guests asked what was wrong, she responded with a flat, this-happens-all-the-time voice. Oh, the sheriff's department called and said they were detaining Robert. Al, still on the phone, decided then and there to change his parenting style. He and June had recently attended a seminar on parenting and realized that they needed to do some things differently. Instead of coming to Robert's rescue or getting nasty as they used to do, Al decided to let Robert learn some responsibility and grow up. "We're not coming down to the station to pick up Robert," he told the officer. "Well, Mr. Frank, if you don't pick him up, I'll have to lock him up." "Well, officer, whatever it takes." Al, sporting a nervous grin, returned to the dining room just as June was clearing the table. She was fumbling for a polite way to end the evening, escort her guests to the door, and then drive to the station to bail out Robert. Al walked in, tossed a pack of cards on the table, and said, "Let's play hearts." He pulled a stunned June aside, smiled, and said, "Let's not spoil a nice evening." For years, Robert had appeared headed for a life of irresponsibility. He lived like a slob and had increasingly resisted his parents' badgering about his sloppy appearance, grungy clothes, messy room, and that infernal music thudding through the walls. At 13, Robert simply forgot to do his chores. The older he grew, the more defiant he became. At 17, he started drinking, even on school nights, and experimenting with drugs. He went out with girls running with the wrong crowd, such as Desiree. Al responded to Robert's moral slide by losing his temper and yelling. June would mutter aloud, "I know this is a kid I wouldn't take off the shelf myself." Robert, of course, just sneered. He had his parents emotionally eating out of his hand, and he knew it. They knew it too, but they felt helpless to reassert control. Then, Al and June attended a seminar that introduced them to an approach called love and logic parenting. They learned that parents should take care of themselves first, let their children own their own problems, and allow them to live with the consequences of their decisions. After the guests from Al's law firm had gone home, later that night, Al and June had another opportunity to apply those principles. At 11 p.m., while they were lying awake wondering if they had done the right thing, the phone rang. "Yes, who is it?" Al answered. "Dad," came Robert's urgent voice over the phone. "Dad, it's pretty bad down here." "Hey, pal, is it really that bad?" Al went on the offensive. "Let's agree that if I get thrown in the hoosegow, you won't rescue me." That was too much for the rattled Robert. "Okay, be that way," he shouted, and slammed down the phone. The phone rang 15 minutes later. This time, June answered. "Mrs. Frank, this is Julie. I'm a counselor at the detention center, Mrs. Frank. I'm so proud of you and your husband. Robert's just fine. You'd be surprised at how many parents come down here and bail their kids out. Parents like you deserve a medal." Al and June held off the next day as well, but Desiree's mother bailed out the two teens. June was dreading the coming confrontation. Robert, however, didn't come home right away. He delayed his return in fear of his parents' anger. When Robert did arrive home, he was surprised to find that his parents weren't mad at him. His arrest was his responsibility, they communicated. They weren't going to berate him, but they weren't going to rescue him either. Their response diffused any anger or defensiveness on Robert's part. Now that he knew the situation was his responsibility, He was open to doing something about it. Robert told his parents that he would need to earn money to reimburse Desiree's mom for bail, to get the car out of impoundment, to tow it to a garage, and to have a new tire put on. "This is the most expensive date I've ever been on," he exclaimed. June was amazed at Robert. "After that experience, we never used the rant and rave method again with the kids," she commented. Today, Robert is a 26-year-old graduate student worrying how to get grants, a social worker trying to make the world a better place, and a picture of social responsibility, according to Al. June now says it's easy for us to forget that adolescence is a phase for the teen and for us too. But if you use the right techniques, it shortens the bad phases. June and Al had gotten a graduate-level education in parenting. Their previous schooling hadn't prepared them for the intensity of the joys, sorrows, and dilemmas they faced daily and sometimes hourly with a teenager. Parents of teenagers invariably find out, if they haven't found out already, what Al and June learned. Children change. And what a change! Just a few years ago, we were changing diapers, reinforcing basic manners, ferrying kids here and there, assisting with homework, watching them play. Sure, we lost our temper at times, or sometimes even felt like we were losing our mind. And yes, there were the inevitable and seemingly endless challenges to our parental authority. But even through the hard lessons, we were still the parent. Our child was still within our control. But then along came a phase change that sent us scrambling back for more education, a graduate course in teenagers. All of a sudden, our kids didn't look the same anymore. Tommy used to be satisfied with double-knee jeans and a T-shirt. Sally used to let Mom buy her clothes. Now, Tom Jr. wears jeans with no knees, and Sally has a close personal relationship with every clothing clerk at the mall. Sometimes they dress like every day is Halloween. These kids are going through bodily transformations that you think no doctor's ever heard of. Tom Jr. towers above Dad and can lift Mom off the floor with one hand. Sally is wearing Mom's clothes. Fact is, children go through more physical changes in 5 years of adolescence than at any other time during their lives. Their brains change so they can think abstractly. They don't believe in Santa Claus anymore, and they're not too sure they believe in you either. Their bodies produce more oil, making their faces break out and sending them into emotional tailspins over zits. And, in case you forgot, they become fertile. The changes aren't just physical either. Body development has remained constant from generation to generation, but societal influences are bombarding families and teens at warp speed with incredible and sometimes catastrophic effects. But family and societal changes are just the outside view. Complicating matters tremendously are the changes on the inside, what teens experience as they live through their own personal development. As you watch your children enter the brave new world of adolescence, you can feel the sting of their volatile emotional reactions to this inner upheaval. Being a teenager is an out-of-body experience, out of a child's body and into an adult's, or somewhere in between. Teenagers may look like an adult while acting like a 2-year-old, as determined to establish their own identity as a defiant toddler. Naturally, we're concerned. Are they ready to handle the real world that waits beyond the safety of our protective care? And just as naturally, our teens grow more self-involved, questioning, and peer-oriented. They assimilate into a subculture, adopting distinctive dress and hairstyles, along with music and language that often offends adult ears. All this is grounded in a deep personal struggle with identity and self-worth. Who am I? Is more than a throwaway line from television shows and juvenile rock songs. It is the central question in teens' transition from dependence to independence. You are the parent of teenagers, and you hope in the few years left before they fly the coop that somehow they'll learn how to make decisions in the real world. The pressures and influences everywhere today were practically unheard of in our parents' day. We're tempted to sink into despair as we watch our children face life and death decisions long before they're on their own. Drugs, alcohol, premarital sex, and especially suicide confront teens and even much younger children on a frequent basis. These pressures can overload parents as much as teens, perhaps even more so, especially if they're trying to parent just like their parents did a generation ago. For example, when Jim's parents said jump, he says, "I thought they could actually make me do it." Teens today know their parents simply don't have that "my word is the law in this house" control because of the social, cultural, and technological revolutions since World War II. They know that they have a right to be treated with respect and dignity, not autocratic control. Now, teens say to themselves, "I'm not sure my parents are right in what they're asking me to do and how they're asking me to do it. And my friends are saying that I don't have to put up with that." No wonder parents are stressed finding ways to work with their teenagers. And teens are stressed trying to figure out how to live with their parents. We're all braving the brave new world. Is there any hope? We believe the answer is a resounding yes. We all hope that we can raise our children in such a way that by the time they turn 18, we can be friends, right? We look forward to meeting them on common ground as adults. But what does this mean? Well, we know what we expect from our adult friends. We assume they will talk and act responsibly, think clearly, play with us when we want to have fun, be serious for the tough times of life, and leave us alone when we need privacy. Why can't we expect the same from our teens? You're probably thinking, you must be talking about somebody else's teens, but we are talking about your teens. The principles we lay out in this book are relevant across the board, from shrinking violets to rebels without a cause. We're going to teach you how to apply them in the task of helping your teens become responsible adults. Parenting requires not only commitment and hard work, but also the right skills. The love and logic techniques are particularly well suited to teens because they emphasize good communication and a consultant approach. These fit well with the emerging independence of the typical teen. And best of all, love and logic parents are building friendships with their children that should last a lifetime. Love and logic is a win-win philosophy. Presuming genetics and social situations are stable, parents win because they love in a healthy way and establish effective control over their teens. They don't need to resort to the anger and threats that will haunt teens along the path to adulthood. Teens win because they learn responsibility and the logic of life by solving their own problems. They acquire the necessary tools for coping with the real world. We offer this philosophy because although teens' fundamental needs are the same as they've been in past generations and across cultures, the influences and pressures on them are radically different. Today's challenges require a new approach to parenting teens, the love and logic way.